All right, we'll call a meeting to order. Welcome all of you to February 7th Murray City Planning Commission meeting. It's just 6:30, and thank you for coming. So commissioners here, to introduce them to you, starting at your right. Marin Patterson, Scott Woodbury, Phil Markham, Sue Wilson, Lisa Mulkevich, and Travis Ney. My name is Ned Hacker. So on the staff, we had Jim McNulty, Jared Hall, Zach Smallwood, and Bryant Farnsworth in the back. So a couple protocols for tonight's meeting. If you have a telephone or device, I'd ask you to respect everybody's time being here tonight, and please silence your phones. If you take a phone call, I'd ask you to again respect the others in the room and take your phone call outside or in the hallway. And if you're here to make public comment, by all means, we want you to make public comment. I would ask that you limit that to 3 minutes as an individual. If you come representing a group of individuals or businesses, we'll give you 5 minutes. So with that, we'll go on to item number 1, which is approval of minutes from our Planning Commission meeting held January 17th. And I'd ask commissioners if they've had opportunity to read that and have any input.
Looks good.
Yes.
Looks
good.
grand.
All right. Did they have a motion to approve those?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the Planning Commission meeting minutes of the Thursday, January 17th, 2019 meeting.
All right. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a second. So I have motion, second. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right. On any opposed? Second item, a conflict of interest. Any commissioners have a conflict of interest for the agenda items tonight?
No.
No.
All right. And item number 3, approval of finding of facts and certificates of appropriateness. Everybody have an opportunity to look at those, and
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, yeah.
I'll
Looked good.
entertain a motion, if you would.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve the finding of facts and conclusions and certificate of appropriatenesses and conditional use permits for January 17th, 2019, and we have 6 of them. It is a certificate of appropriateness for a monopole relocation for American Tower, a certificate of appropriateness for Fizz of Murray, a conditional use permit for Cottonwood Animal Hospital, conditional use permit for accessory dwelling unit for Melanie Jenkins, conditional use permit for Circle A Estates, and a conditional use permit for Tecton CrossFit.
All right. I have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. So, item number 4, Gregory accessory dwelling unit, requesting conditional use permit to allow an accessory dwelling unit at the location of the property address 1191 West Pitchfork Road. And Jared Hall is going to present this.
Thank you. As you mentioned, this is at 1191 West Pitchfork Road. This is a new portion of the city, Murray Cove. If you guys aren't familiar with Murray Cove as the Planning Commission, I cannot help you. This is the part of Murray Cove that has started to be built, and people are residing here now in some of these homes. This home let me see, I'm going to get my numbers right. We have a home that's about 3,000, I'm going to get the wrong number here, 3,742 square feet total. As you're aware, single-family zones in Murray, in all of our single-family zones, we do allow accessory dwelling units if they'll meet the conditions that we apply to those, and we'll run through those tonight for the Commission and for the benefit of the public. This particular property is in the R110 zone. That's one of the zones where we would allow these with the conditional use permit. An accessory dwelling unit is a unit that is accessory without being redundant to the primary dwelling unit. So we have those conditions that require that the first and foremost, we always tell people when they call asking about these properties and to use this, to ask for this kind of use, that you must live on the property. You must live in either the accessory dwelling unit as the owner or the primary dwelling unit, and we file affidavits to that effect. That would not be a problem here. The owners are willing to live in the property and intend to do that. We don't allow them to be more than 40% of the total of the square footage. This particular unit is much less than, it's 28% of the total. There was some indication in your Planning Commission report about the size of the unit, and I want to talk about that briefly here. This is the property, and this is the upstairs, and we'll come back to that site plan in a moment. And the downstairs where the accessory dwelling unit has been finished. There's a family room, 2 bedrooms, a little bit of storage, and a kitchen, and the bathroom there, laundry facilities. There's an outside stair leading to the unit. We don't allow those to be in the front. This is in the side setback. We don't allow the units to be more than 1,000 square feet, no matter what the percentage. So you have to be no more than 40% of the total square footage of the house, or no more than 1,000 square feet, whichever is less. When we did our rough calculations on this, we got 1,063 square feet. We were concerned about that because we didn't have an obvious place to remove anything from the accessory dwelling unit and get it down to the 1,000 square feet that's allowed. In being able to do better calculations with the computer program, and Zach, being the whiz kid that he is, was able to use Bluebeam and the actual building plans, and the number turns out to be 1,016 square feet. So it's slightly over. It was supposed to be 1,000 in the building plans. We can reduce that number by closing off a closet. There's a storage closet here and a coat closet. If those are attached to the primary dwelling unit instead, used by the primary dwelling unit, that takes the number to 991 square feet, which would meet our code. That's our suggestion. Our condition that we've recommended to the Planning Commission is simply that they meet that 1,000 square feet. If they do it by doing that, or removing a bedroom from the accessory dwelling unit, whatever they want to do, we just need to get that number under 1,000 square feet. One other thing to be aware of as we talk about this is that parking is an issue for accessory dwelling units. We do ask that there be an obvious way to park 2 more vehicles than are normally at a home, so that a family living in the house is not impacted, and the neighborhood's not impacted by parking on the street. We don't allow accessory dwelling units to park their vehicles on the street. In this case, there's the driveway is wide, there's plenty of parking in the garage, and then there's this pad around the side that can accommodate some more vehicles parking. So we don't have concerns with the parking. We feel like they're meeting that requirement, or can meet that requirement. Again, we talked about the owners living in one of the units. That's absolutely necessary, and they'll be required to file the affidavits to that effect. We talked about the size of that unit. We don't allow more than 2 bedrooms. That's something to be aware of. With accessory dwelling units also, this is an important point, and we had, as I mentioned to you in the pre-meeting, we did have lots of comments from the neighborhood, from other property owners, phone calls and emails as well, about there having been Airbnb rentals, short-term rentals at this property. We're aware of that because once we took the application, it had come to our attention at that point. The owners are on notice that's not allowed. Short-term rentals are not supported by city zoning. We do allow accessory dwelling units, but they have to be rented for at least 30 days at a time. In most cases, people are doing, they're doing 6-month leases or 1-year leases, that kind of thing, and that's what we would encourage for these. We do not allow Airbnb rentals 1 week at a time, a few days. That's not allowed. That's in your conditions of approval as well. We're aware of that. If we're notified that that continues, we would take code enforcement action. We have a number of cases like that all the time. Airbnbs happen, and where they're not approved by the city, we have to take that action. So I wanted to make sure you knew we have that condition as well. We are aware of that, and the owners are aware that we're aware of that. We've had conversations. Their intent is to rent it long-term, not short-term. We have recommended those 14 conditions. The 14th is the one we were just speaking about. Temporary rentals are not allowed. They're on notice about that. And then again, the size of the unit reduced to meet the 1,000 square feet or under. There's an easy way to get to 991. That should be all right. So we are recommending approval if they can meet these conditions. Any questions for staff at this point? No. Thank you very much.
Is the applicant here? Is the applicant here this evening? Will you come forward, please, and for the record, provide your name and address?
Yes. Don Gregory, 1191 West Pitchfork Road, Murray, Utah 84123.
Have you had an opportunity to review the conditions?
I have, yes.
And are you able to comply with them?
Yes.
Okay. Staff have any questions, comments? Commission?
The commission.
Anything he wants to add? No.
Do you have anything to add?
I don't.
All right. Thank you.
Thank
Pretty
you.
straightforward.
All right, so I will open the meeting for public comment. Does anybody have public comment? Come up, please. Again, please state your name and your address for the record.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Woloschuk, co-owner of 1211 West Pitchfork Road in Murray Cove, 2 doors down from the applicant. I've been nominated to speak on behalf of some of the neighbors in this new development to express some concerns, seek some clarifications on the conditions that are stipulated in the consideration of this application, and finally, to request additional conditions on behalf of the neighbors be required before this application is approved. We as neighbors all want to be neighborly with the applicant. However, we also concur that we want to ensure the safety of our community is considered, that this ADU is legal, and that the applicant will comply with the approved ADU and its stipulated conditions. The consensus is the primary concern relates to short-term rentals. That's already been raised. Primarily the increase in traffic in and out of our neighborhood, late night traffic and disruptions to residents, the noise coming from the property due to parties and unruly behavior, on-street parking from tenants, which has been occurring, potential risk of property damage and theft, risk to our children playing in the neighborhood, and leases shorter than 6 months are actually forbidden in our HOA conditions. So we've seen the conditions that have been presented about short-term rentals, but it hasn't been stipulated the definition of a short-term rental. So we would ask that you define the lease term to be no shorter than 6 months. And we'd also ask that you consider stipulating that potential tenants to seek background checks, screening checks, criminal records for prospective tenants to avoid potential safety and security issues, to avoid potential tenant with violent crimes, past robbery or burglary, or crimes against children being denied the opportunity to rent this. Murray Cove residents wish to protect the value of our homes and ensure the safety of our children and our assets. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to provide public comment? In that case, I'll close the public comment period and ask staff
Staff
to
address them, yeah.
address some of the comments made.
Sure. Let me go ahead and address just real quickly some of the comments. To start with, let me just define short-term rentals for the city. So I understand from Mr. Wojciech's comments that the HOA defines short-term rentals as less than 6 months. The city's codes find anything less than 30 days to be short-term rental. More than 30 days isn't a common rental period. You don't see a lot of leases for 30 days or anything, but nonetheless, our city codes kind of identify 30 days as the cutoff for short-term rentals. Anything less than that, we put in the category of hotels, appropriately to my thinking, in spite of the Airbnb craze. That is a hotel that needs to be in that kind of zoning. That's not allowed in R18 zoning or in R110 zoning or any other single-family zone. So 30 days is our cutoff for short-term rentals. That's what we would consider. And to the rest of the comment, that's the only rule that we can enforce as a city, the only rule that we will enforce. We're not able to enforce CC&Rs or HOA rules because those are private contracts and we don't get involved in that. That's civil to civil. Where there's overlap, that's great. If a rental situation is inappropriate because it's a week long and we hear about that, we'll enforce that, but we're enforcing it because of the city ordinance, not because of the HOAs. I need to make sure that's clear. The HOA has other actions they can take. They can levy fines or whatever that may be. That's defined in their own documents, but we don't get involved in that.
Or Jared, an HOA can make any kind of stipulations as long as they apply with our state laws. So if they feel there should be other stipulations, they could as an HOA. That's out of
Certainly.
That's up to them. We just enforce what we have on ordinance. And to that point, actually, I appreciate you bringing that up because it leads me to the next qualification. We do not also require or stipulate the requiring of background checks or credit checks or anything else like that. That's not in the city's purview. It's not part of our ordinances. So
Couldn't it be seen as discriminatory as well?
it would be unconstitutional. We would never do it. I would.
Because the owner of the house doesn't have to undergo a
Yeah,
background
you
check.
buy a home and have a criminal background. It doesn't guarantee anything.
But
So it's not something that we do. And that's probably far enough to go with that. That's probably pretty much what I could address there. Is there anything else that I needed to clarify for the commission?
The only thing I'd like to clarify is just that we don't deal with anything outside the established requirements
Correct.
that the city has, the established code. It is not our place to
Yeah.
impose any restrictions that are more severe than city code,
Right.
correct?
Exactly, and to that, I'm glad you remembered that, Commissioner Markham, thank you. So the statement was talked about the 6-month period that they're not allowed to happen in less than 6 months, or potentially not at all. We can't consider that because it is an HOA, it's outside of our purview. If this meets the requirements for accessory dwelling units, then our staff recommendation stands. It should be approved for an accessory dwelling unit. If they're not able to use it, the way that they anticipated because of CCNRs, that's a separate matter and not for the commission to consider. Thank you, Phil.
Mr.
So,
Hall?
oh, no, go ahead.
Just for completion of discussion, I think the only thing on the list that we haven't addressed is parking, and we are addressing that in the parking requirements.
Correct.
The on-street parking.
Right. Accessory dwelling units are not allowed to park their cars on the street. It's part of our ordinance. So they have to provide off-street parking, additional off-street parking like they've done here. But then too, they're not supposed to park. A normal family, a normal home, you can park in front of your house, et cetera. The occupants of the accessory dwelling unit are not supposed to do that. It's one of the ways that we try to keep accessory dwelling units from impacting neighborhoods. The whole goal of the ADU ordinance is so that we can have this accessory use, we can add options for housing that are badly needed in the state and in Murray to the things that we can offer without impacting the character of the neighborhood. And we've seen a lot of successes as we've gone through the last few years with these accessory dwelling units in that regard. And it's because of all these various rules that we have. So we feel like as staff, we're very confident in the recommendation that if we can apply these rules and they can live by them, you would never know that there was someone else renting in the home.
So if, now that these conditions have been put on this property and there continues to be problems with this property and they're violating some of these conditions, maybe they continue to rent it out in a way that's not appropriate, what are the steps that could be taken by the neighbors if they continue to have problems?
We would just want reported concerns. We would want to know about it. Once we know about it as a city, if it's still being used as a short-term rental, we'd bring it back to you to revoke the conditional use permit and then cite them for operating without a license.
So they have some recourse if
Yeah,
they
definitely.
don't abide by what they're agreeing to.
And that would be the recourse. We'd open an investigation once we show that they are doing that. We'd give them some cease and desist and bring them back to the commission to revoke that conditional use permit. And then following that, if they continued to do it without the conditional use permit and a license, we'd cite them for operating without a license, because that's the operation of a business. One of the conditions, so we didn't really talk about it, but one of the conditions is that they get a business license, a rental license from the city to operate and use that rental. So we review it every year. We get a renewal and check things out and make sure things are still going well. So there's kind of an automatic process to it.
Well, and Jared, essentially, the reason we're doing this is to allow us to have recourse. Prior to 2012 or 2014? 2014, I think. 12?
2012.
2012. There was no ADU ordinance.
Right.
And so people would rent their houses, they'd rent them to whomever, and there was nothing that necessarily allowed us to tell people and give them guidelines on how you can properly rent your place. And so it was difficult for us to come back and enforce. And now, as people go through this process, we found, I mean, Phil and I have both been on the commission since 2012, and we've never had one of these come back, for a review because people abide by the conditions. But it's also important to remember that as neighbors, I mean, you guys are the front line, and you need to make sure that you're vigilant and that you're aware of what's going on around you, and that you do report things to the city, but report to things to the city that deal with the conditional use permit, not things that are according to your HOA. It's really important to make sure that we differentiate between the two, because we only have authority for what is in the conditional use permit and the purview of the city.
Thank you.
So.
Anything else? Thank you all.
All right. Any other comments, discussion from the commission?
No, Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion that we approve the conditional use permit to allow an accessory dwelling unit at the property addressed 1191 West Pitchfork Road, subject to the 14 conditions.
All right. Have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
And motion and a second. Any other discussion? Jared, could you call the vote, please?
Commissioner Patterson.
Yes.
Commissioner Day.
Yes.
Mr. Woodbury.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Hacker.
Yes. All right, thank you very much. And I think I'll just echo what Scott said, is as Murray citizens and residents in the area, be vigilant and make sure that your neighbors are following your rules, and if not, let the city staff know that they can enforce. So, thank you. Good luck. Agenda item number 5, Marathon Electric conditional use permit to allow electrical contracting business to be located at property address 6650 South Cottonwood Street. So is applicant here tonight? All right, we'll call you up in a little bit. So Zach is going to present this item.
Thank you. Yeah, this is a conditional use application for a electrical business, like you had stated. It's located here towards the southern side of the city, at about 6600 South. It is located in the MG zone, where we allow contractors with a conditional use permit. Here, as you can see, so this has now been flipped, so the north is on your left-hand side, or I'm sorry, on the bottom of the page. North is on the bottom of the page. I'm having a Jared
That's kind of
moment.
mean.
Yeah, so here is the existing residence. That's what makes this very unique here, is that on your left-hand side, there's an existing residential house that the applicant proposes to use and rent out as a residence, while they occupy and use the back portion as their electrical contracting business. Here we have a layout of the proposed business, kind of what they're proposing to do. You walk in, you have a couple cubicles and mostly storage, warehouse space in the back. Here are a few photos of it. The residence faces out onto Cottonwood Street, and then you can see here the second picture on the top there shows where the business is. And what's unique about this one of the unique things about this property is the parking requirements. Typically, we require 4 spaces per 1,000 square feet of office and 1 space for every 750 square feet for warehouse, or the number of employees. Because of the way that this business operates, where the contractors take their vehicles home at night, and they just come into the shop to refill on supplies and things like that. We decided to go with the former, doing the 4 spaces per 1,000, etc., which brings them to 6 spaces for the business and then 2 spaces for the residential. With that being said, so also here's some photos of inside the unit there. And then the last thing I want to mention is the utility meters. The power department has come out and said that there is 1 utility meter that is attached to the residence, and they're requiring that be maintained. So no additional utility meter would be allowed there. And as I mentioned in the pre-meeting, the landscaping is conforming and does meet our requirements, which is unique. That's kind of exciting. So other than that, I have staff recommends that that the Planning Commission approve a conditional use permit, subject to these 9 conditions. Any questions I can answer?
I've got one for Zach.
Sure.
In one of the pictures, Zach, it showed, the existing business that's there, and I know that this is a new business that's going to be coming in.
Yeah.
Just previous to this, the exterior photos, it shows a lot of water heaters that have been taken out, and they're in the yard and that. Will there be any outside storage allowed of inventory?
That's a great question, and actually I don't think I've addressed that, but if you guys would like to address that, that's...
Yeah, I personally would. I'd like to talk to, or at least hear from the applicant, but, this would go a long way in cleaning up the property, and that's a standard condition I think that we've used in other,
I agree, and
applications before us as well.
That's great. That is definitely something I missed
Okay.
there, so
All right.
thank you for pointing
Thanks.
that out.
Anything else for staff? All right. So I'd ask the applicant to come up and state your name and your address for the record, please.
It's Matt Erkenbrack, 4322 South Main Street here in Murray.
Okay. Have you had an opportunity to review these conditions?
Yes, sir.
And are you able to comply with them?
Yes, sir.
Do you have anything else to add to the report?
No.
Can we?
With regard to storage of outside materials and that, do you plan on needing to do that? Is the building sufficient for your needs at this time?
I think the building inside's sufficient for what we have. We're not going to be storing anything outside like that. That's the previous owner has. So.
You know, and it really wouldn't be that bad if, you know, a shed was put out there and stuff was inside in that. But I am inclined personally to add that condition to the list of conditions that outside storage of materials, no outside storage of materials will be allowed.
Okay.
If that's, okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks.
Anything else to add?
Is he willing to
All right.
provide
Thank you
that?
very much.
Thank you.
Oh, he said, yeah.
So I will bring it back here. Is there any, I'll open the meeting for public comment and ask if anyone here would like to make a comment regarding this item. Seeing none, I'll close public comment and bring it back to the commissioners for any other discussion or a motion.
I'd like to make a motion.
Did you add the 10th
Yes, I
condition?
did.
Yeah, she
Okay.
mentioned
All
this.
right, good.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve a conditional use permit to allow an electrical contracting business at the property addressed 6650 South Cottonwood Street, subject to conditions 1 through 9 with the addition of condition 10, which shall read, no outside storage of building materials or inventory will be allowed on premises.
All right, I have a motion. I have
I'll
Go ahead.
I'll second.
and a second. Any other discussion? Zach, would you, or Jared, call for a vote, please?
I can do it. Sorry, I'm not prepared.
And don't volunteer.
Read the names. Just read
Just read the names and write what we voted.
Yeah.
Are you watching basketball down there?
This was a test question.
Okay. Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Woodbury,
I don't know if I'm ready. Just kidding. Yes.
Commissioner Patterson,
Yes.
Commissioner Marco,
Yes.
Commissioner Kevich,
Yes.
Commissioner Trigg,
Yes.
Yes. All right. Motion passed. Good luck with your business, and thank you for being in Murray.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Item number 7, Murray Yellow House General Plan
6.
Amendment.
6.
Yeah,
Oh, excuse me. I'm ahead of myself. Number 6, Posse Athletics, conditional use permit to allow a CrossFit style gym business to be located at the property 5412 South 900 East. And Zach Smallwood is going to present this one as well.
I'm back. All right, so like you had mentioned, this is a proposal for a CrossFit gym located in the CD district, which is allowed conditionally. It's located here off Wood Oak Lane and 900 East, just on that end unit there next to Octapharma. It is in the CD zone, like I mentioned. Here is kind of the site plan showing where parking is located, things like that. This is a 6,300 square foot unit, and their operations, they're proposing 6 to 11 a.m. and 5 to 8 p.m. Monday through Saturday. Then here is a drawing of their floor plan. They are proposing to, currently there are, let's see if this works, some little divider walls that go along this part here that they're proposing to take out. Some photos of the property just showing kind of where the parking's located and just of the site. This is interior. I probably looked like I was doing something illegal because I'm sitting there putting my phone up against the glass trying to take pictures. So staff is recommending approval for this CrossFit style training facility, subject to the 8 conditions below. I blew through that really quick. Are there any questions for me.
Any questions for Zach?
No, pretty awesome.
All right. Is applicant here tonight? Will you come forward, please, and state your name and your address for the record?
Ryan Birdsley, 5044 South Valine Street.
And have you had opportunity to review the conditions?
I have, yes.
And can you comply with those
I can,
conditions?
yes.
All right. Do you have anything to add to the report?
No, I think Zach covered it all, so.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Can I ask a
Oh,
question?
sure. Excuse me.
Have you had an opportunity to review the landscaping requirements?
Yes, we have had a chance to do that. We have talked with the owner of
With the property owner? Okay. Just wanna make sure
So, yeah, we have spoken with him. That is a concern that he does have. You know, that's something that we're gonna kind of work through our lease, before we go ahead and sign that, so.
Okay, perfect.
All right. Any other questions
That's a good question.
for the applicant?
I had one question.
Yeah.
On the application, it says you're looking for a facility for group and personal training.
Right.
And in our packet, we talked about group predominantly. Is your group and personal training what you're looking for? Can you describe that? And will it,
Yeah,
those
sure.
two together will be
So
50
we
people?
run group classes, so there's always a coach that is there during the class that instructs and watches over the athletes while they're performing a workout. So we take them through a warm-up. We'll typically do like a strength or a skill exercise, and then we'll have like a high-intensity workout, you know, and classes run through about an hour. We have anywhere between, our smallest class is probably about 6 athletes, on up to 19 athletes in a class.
So then that 19 number would be your largest capacity.
Currently, yes.
So we were looking at the numbers of 15 athletes at a time at one point. 19, would that require adjustment in parking requirements, or is it still within?
So we have so with our parking requirements, they have 4.8 spaces per 1,000 square feet. So we have up to 29 parking spaces. I believe there's a total of 524 spaces in that spot, or in the area. So,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hopefully that'll.
Are you one of the trainers?
I am. I'm the owner and one of the trainers. Yes.
Good. Excellent. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
I will open the meeting for public comment regarding this item. Are there any audience who would like to comment? Seeing none, I will close public comment period and bring it back here for any other additional discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve the conditional use permit to allow a CrossFit-style gym at the property addressed 5412 South 900 East, subject to conditions 1 through 8.
I'd like to second that motion.
Okay, a motion, second. Any other discussion? And call for the vote, whoever.
Whoever's ready. Yes.
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 Yes. All right. Thank you very much. Good luck with your business and welcome. We're happy to have you as business in Murray. All right. Now, item number 7, Murray Yellow House, general plan amendment, requesting approval to amend the future land use map for the subject property at 344 East, 5600 South, from a low-density residential to medium-density residential.
Thank you. So this is, as you said, a general plan amendment request only to modify the future land use map. And I think that bears a little explaining for folks in the audience, probably a bit, and it's a little different for us as well. We usually see these accompanied by requests to change the zoning. This is, to start with, this is the property. You can see from the air there, 5600 South. The applicants in this case owned this property, the Murray Yellow House. There actually used to be a yellow house here, the Murray Yellow House, and many of you are probably familiar with it. That has been demolished at this point. And then the retirement home, the senior apartments here, also owned by the applicant, just to point that out. This property sits in the R18 zone. The applicant's other property sits in the RM15 zone. In every property in the city is identified by 2 different designations on maps. The first of those is the future land use map that's part of our general plan. The second is this map here, the zoning map that this is a segment of. So you have a zone, R18 and RM15. The future land use map is a little different, although the colors and some of the names are a little similar, just by way of explanation. So the identifying, the designation in the future land use map and the general plan for that property that's the subject property tonight is low-density residential. That's a designation that supports certain zones in our general plan, and the ones that are identified are R18, R110, R112, R16, and that's what we have. It's actually zoned R18, which is in line with its future land use map designation currently. So you have this R18 zone that lines up with the things that are supported, the zones that are supported by this designation. Next door, however, the other property owned by the applicant is in the medium density residential designation, and that's the designation they've requested to change the subject property to. That supports different zones. That designation would support it would support R16 also, but then also RM10, RM15 as well. So those are zones that would allow multifamily apartments, condominiums, that kind of thing, up to about 12 units to the acre, to the RM15. So our assumption as staff is that the application tonight is to change this designation from low density to medium density, as the neighboring property is, probably as a precursor to an application for a zone change as well to some other zone that's supported by that other designation. Just to show you the general plan from before, this is the map segment you were just looking at that we currently have, and the map was adopted with the general plan in 2017, less than 2 years ago, with the medium density designation here and this low density residential designation here. In the previous general plan, the future land use map that it had identified the property as low density residential also. That was a category. These other different colors, it looks a little confusing. They're actually the same kind of thing as this. It's just that we used to identify sort of breakdowns of density that we don't do anymore. Now we just talk about low density residential, medium density residential, and high density residential. The previous plan identified low density residential, medium density residential, single family, and high density multifamily, medium density multifamily, low density multifamily. Just for example, what you're seeing here is residential, single family, medium density. We don't have that designation anymore. But it's more in line, the zones that it supported were more in line with the things that are supported by the medium density residential category, so we applied that category. We do feel like this was a consideration that was made as staff during the process. We did take 3 years to generate this general plan and finally adopt it. You're all aware of that because most of you were part of this body, or one body in the city or another while we were adopting that plan. Most of the land around the property we're talking about is developed in single family. If you go to the south, to the east, you have this immediate piece, and then these are single-family detached homes in a planned unit development, and that's why that designation is different, and the zoning's different, frankly, as well. To the north, there's some medium density residential here in the condos, but a lot of single-family as well. Staff still supports the line that we've had in the past general plan and that we continued forward in the 2017 general plan. We still feel like that's an appropriate demarcation between the low density and higher density, medium density kinds of designations. We talked about some concerns that we had with the city engineer expressing his concerns about the infrastructure and strains on that infrastructure. There are parts of the city where we have sort of focused on multiple family, higher densities, and this is not really one of them. Up near 9th East, we have a commercial center. We've established a neighborhood node there, if you remember from the general plan as well. So we could consider different things in that area than we would here. They're not in the proximity of a node. We kind of want to stick with the general plan designations that we have. It's not near State Street where we would consider different things as well. We did make certain findings, and those are in your report, but I just wanted to briefly review those. Staff, we feel like the redesignation at this time would be detrimental to goals and objectives that are in the general plan. We try to stabilize established, flourishing single-family neighborhoods. We feel like this would be detrimental to the good things that are happening hillside and some of that area. We did feel like the amendment was considered. I mentioned we talked about this during the general plan process. We feel like it was continued the same way from 2003 after appropriate consideration. And we feel like changing that plan would be contrary to our goals. And then again, it's only been a year and a little bit since we adopted that plan. In other cases like this, we've found that it's just too soon to try to make changes to that general plan future land use map at this point. We are recommending that the Planning Commission forward a recommendation of denial to the City Council. This does have to be considered by the City Council as well, just like a zone change would. But we are recommending that you recommend denial to the city council. Any questions for staff at this point?
I do have one.
Okay, go ahead.
Back to when we were considering the proximity to the node, the neighborhood node. What do you consider proximity? Quarter mile, half mile?
Probably a quarter mile. Walking distance to the node would make sense. That's what we talked about during the process.
and
So
this-
the nodes are kind of these giant stars on the plan, so they're not very specifically defined, but they're basically centered around intersections. So anything within walking distance of that intersection, we would want to, what we wanted with those nodes was to be flexible with our thinking about those future land use map designations.
And this is clearly outside of that quarter mile or half mile radius. Yeah. Okay.
All right, any other questions for staff? No. All right, is applicant here this evening? You please come forward, state your name and your address for the record.
My name's Jessica Van Tassel, 4968 South Cowdell Street.
And have you had an opportunity to
There's nothing
review
to
the
There's nothing to review.
We have.
No.
review the
No
staff
conditions.
report and
Yeah, we reviewed it.
understand all of the?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, good. Do you have anything to add for us?
All of those are, yes, we do. These are
Okay.
all for you guys.
Thank you. Yes, I'd be happy to do that.
So just a couple additional points that we wanted to make after we had a chance to review what your comments were before the meeting. And I'll wait until you all have a chance to look at this paper in front of you. Okay, so just a couple of points that we wanted to go over. The general plan, as per your website and as what we've been told, is used to help make decisions that will better the future of the community, and we feel this change actually will better the future of the community. As we go down the list, it'll kind of explain why. Another thing that we've noticed is we've gotten a lot of pushback just because of the age of the general plan. But despite the age of the general plan, even though it's new, if this does actually benefit the community, it should be implemented even if the general plan is brand new. So, we have a lot of growth happening. In Murray City alone, we will see an average of 81 new households per year, and the city needs to prepare and plan for these new households to come. This will help facilitate that growth if we were to change this. I think I do need to mention, though, we do plan on making a rezone if this is approved. If the general plan change is approved, then we will go through a rezone application. We just didn't want to spend the money because in the previous meeting that we had, we basically were told it's probably not going to happen. So we just didn't do two applications at once to save on a little
That's
money. So,
Okay.
but if you do approve it, then we will be going for a rezone as well.
All right.
So, a few ways that we feel this will benefit Murray City as well as the community is that if we do get this changed and we're able to do a development with a few new homes in it, then it will increase the value of the existing homes in the area, which will benefit the current residents as well as the economy. It'll also benefit Murray City because they will be able to receive additional taxes from new homes put in Murray City. We also have been told that Murray City doesn't think that this is a great idea just because it doesn't conform to what the surrounding zoning is. And if you actually look at this map here, we kind of feel like that's not true just because the predominant surrounding zoning is the RM15 as well as the adjacent, the approximate, and the neighboring properties. So if you look at this map that you have here, on the north side of the street is just one house deep, and then you have the RM15, so it's one row of houses for the R18 and then RM15. But it's kind of odd that on the south side of the street that it just kind of skipped our property and then went RM15. So we feel like that should have been picked up with the RM15 when you guys made this new general plan in 2017. Excuse me. Do you guys have any questions?
Any commissioners have questions?
I just wanted to add one thing. I appreciate the additional information that you provided, but I do want you to know that I did not look at it. I don't have time right now to consider what's in that. And, we've got a very thorough staff report in front of us that includes the materials. submitted by you folks in your application, and that's all I'm reviewing, and that's all I've had the opportunity to review at my leisure for the last week. And so just to let you know, if there's anything in there that we don't talk about, that's why.
Hey, Commissioner Markham, can I ask you a question in regard to that? I believe we have a request for information be submitted in a time frame so
correct.
that we can address it in a timely
Right.
manner. Is that
Right. That's why I don't want to say ignore it. That's rather harsh. I'm not referring to it.
And I'll actually piggyback on that a little bit. I mean, I actually have looked over this real quick, and the challenge for me is with any statistic, there's always two sides, and people are often good at making statistics look to favor what they want. And so, some of the things I see on here don't necessarily, I don't see enough information, and to Phil's point, I haven't had time to research to see whether I find this to be, and not questioning integrity or anything, but just whether I find it the phrase here says, will be far below the needs of the city's demographic. Okay, quantify. I haven't had an opportunity to really quantify what far below means. So that bears no influence on me, to look at it and say, well, if the general plan changes in 10 years, which it will, and we'll actually start working on it probably within 7 to 8 years, I just don't know what far below means. So I appreciate you giving me the information. It's interesting for me to see the points, but without having the ability to really go and kind of do a little bit more research, discuss it with staff, and where some of these things brought up, with the planning staff and with the other departments in the city, it's difficult for me to really add any value to this in terms of influencing a decision or recommendation. But I want you to know I do appreciate it coming and appreciate the work on it. But to Commissioner Lisa Milkevich, to her point, something like this in advance would have been very beneficial. I could have done a little bit more work on it, but thank you for preparing it.
along the same lines of thought, thank you for presenting it. It's hard to be useful with such short notice. Another example of that, supporting that thought process, is it's your statements discussed about the need for new homes, and I already have written a lot of comments. Like, I think we have areas designated for medium density already, and the current zoning allows for new homes too. So I can't put a whole lot of weight into the new arguments because they're new. We haven't had time to discuss and work through them. Sorry.
Other thoughts from the commission? All right, thank you very much. So I'll open the meeting for public comment. If anybody has public comment, please come forward. Sure, state your name and your address for the record. And I'd ask that if you have personal comments, please limit your comments to 3 minutes. And if you're speaking for a group, we can give you 5 minutes.
Okay, it's just me, so I'll get 3 minutes, I guess. My name is Andrea Washburn, and I live at 5753 South Hillside. So I'm just 3 houses from there. And I understand the need for new housing, but I'm just kind of concerned about what medium density housing is. I don't really understand, like, is it going to be something tall? Because I can see that from my yard, and there's also a lot of wildlife in that area, so I'm kind of concerned about the loss of wildlife. There's bats and stuff that are there, so that's a concern of mine. But I just feel like I just bought my house last year. I was just in front of you guys a few months ago myself, but I'm just kind of concerned that it's going to change the character of the neighborhood, and if it's something that is like little houses or something like what we live in, then I don't really mind it. But if it's something big and tall, I think I would be pretty concerned that it's going to be an impediment to me enjoying the neighborhood in my backyard. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Are there other comments that you'd like to make?
Yeah, hello, my name's Patrick Garcia. I live at 5670 Hillside Drive. I'm essentially across the street from the lower left corner of the property boundary. As far as, there was an argument that was made that there would be an increase in property value. I'll speak to that real quickly. My wife and I just moved in October. We purchased the house. And I would be lying to say that it wasn't a significant factor in our decision to move to that particular location, based on the fact that as we drove through there was not a high-density dwelling across the street. The small kickout on the property, it's only big enough, I assume, to be a driveway that would be access to that property, and like I said, I'd literally be across the street. So I know that there will be an impact to the property values, and I can't see that it would be one that would increase it, because as a recent purchaser, that was a specific requirement that I looked at. As far as that being potentially a road in any future developments, my concern is that, we've got McMillan Elementary School, Hillcrest Junior High School, Murray High School. There's a lot of children that we watch all day walk up and down that street. That curve in the road, whether it's lined or not, is completely disregarded by anybody who drives down that street. The snow plows cut the corner. We had a police officer from Murray just today drive down there, and the way the road curves, they just kind of cut it short on the left and cut it short on the right. Everybody does it. It's an accident waiting to happen if people are driving out of there on a regular basis. Not to mention the fact that with the zoning for the medium density housing in the area that it's at, there becomes a natural buffer because of the dwelling that's in there. It's not a series of apartment buildings. It's kind of a cross between a large, high-density area and the residential section, and it adds a nice buffer because there's already a large parking lot area around it. I think it works. I think the plan was well thought out. There's a number of factors that I could go into, but I know I speak for at least the ladies in the second row here that we're all, Pat in the middle will literally be backing up against it. I know that it's not something that she's looking forward to. I just think I speak for many of the people that are on the street that we're in support of your non-supporting it. Makes sense. Appreciate your time.
Thank
All right, thank you.
Roland Page, 5682 Hillside Drive, Murray. We live right across from the little bump out there. Our driveway is right across the street from it. We're wondering what's going to happen. How many egresses are going to have in this place if it's ever approved? It looks like there's only one way they can get in and out of the property, and high density wouldn't work out very well. But we're just concerned about our driveway, and then I could say the neighborhood, value to the neighborhood, and we approve your actions. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? Please come up to the mic and.
Okay, my name's Brooke Garcia. We just moved in. I just want to state that I'm actually from Murray, lived on Washington, I went to McMillan for kindergarten, Liberty, Hillcrest, and Murray. We have lived in Holiday or East Mill Creek since then. 4 houses from us, the same owner kept buying properties. They all bought them. Same thing kind of happened. Made them condos. That's actually one of the reasons that we moved. So coming back to Murray, where I grew up, was something exciting. My husband is from California. And like I said, I have 5 children. Part of the reason that we picked where we picked, and we looked for a year and a half, where we kind of didn't want medium density or high density. If you guys came and just watched how many kids walked to McMillan and back, how many cars from over where Hillcrest is drive their, in that Hillcrest Junior High area, that drive their kids to McMillan. It's adding more cars on there it's unsafe. And there was actually a police officer there today after the junior high got off, kind of monitoring. So just the traffic and stuff, so.
Thank you. Thank you. Please state your name and your address for the record.
My name is Deborah Williams, and I live at 5624 South Hillside, so I'm second house over from the corner. And across the street on the corner is an elderly lady, and I was speaking to her last night, and she was saying she definitely wanted low density. Now, the back of her yard would join with that area. I came in very late to the meeting. Sorry, I got held up getting a prescription. So I did not find out exactly what's going on. I thought we were voting between low and medium density, but now I'm hearing something different. Can
No,
someone fill me
that
in?
is what we're going to vote on here
Okay.
shortly.
Okay, well, I know that she wants low density, and I want low density. Do I need to give the reasons why?
We'll absolutely take your comments, yes.
Well, I think if you're looking at putting apartment complexes, is that the idea?
There's actually no application for a use as far as a particular project. It's just the zone change that would allow a variety of projects. And actually, after the general comment, we'll have staff address what some of those potential uses could be. But there's no project right now that we're considering, number of units, how high, anything like that. Simply just the land use.
Okay.
So staff can address that a little bit more.
Okay. I just feel like if apartment complexes are put in there, it would increase the traffic, increase the pollution we already have in the area, and it would feel like less of a residential area. And as they have said, we're getting a lot of traffic. When people find out that they can cut through Hillside, that's what everyone does, including large trucks that are not supposed to be going through. It's only supposed to be small trucks, but everyone goes through there because it's a cut through. They figure they're going to save some time going through that way than going up on Fashion Boulevard. So that's all I have to say.
All right, thank you very much. So, other public comments? Seeing none, I will close the public comment period and ask Jared come up and address some of the comments.
Thank you. So, just a couple of things, if we can help to clarify some of the questions. So, one of the questions was, what would that mean? Medium density residential, what would it support? So, the corresponding zones in the medium density category that you see up there, that's next door to it, that's what they're asking for, would be the R16 zone, the RM10 zone, or the RM15 zone. RM15 is the actual zoning that's next door right now. So, being a little bit presumptuous and assuming that the zone change request would be to RM15, that would allow up to 12 units to the acre in a multifamily project. So multifamily is a term that people sometimes don't understand. That doesn't have to be apartments. That could be townhomes or multifamily. It's attached housing. You could get about 18 units by that acreage alone. Now, it is kind of an odd-shaped piece. There's some acreage that it's not going to be usable. It's likely that it would be less than that because access issues and things tend to whittle that yield down. So I don't know, but that's just a rough kind of an idea so you'd know as an idea. Low density residential, as I said, R112, R110, R18, and R16 as well. We do support that in the by that designation. There were a couple of questions about the wildlife and things. I can't really speak to that gets impacted whenever there's development. Go ahead.
Sorry, just real quick, you just said R16, R18, R12. Just can you define that briefly for those that don't know?
Sure. So R16 is a single family zone. There's no multifamily allowed. You have to do single family detached lots, 6,000 square feet per the lot. So I mentioned 12 units to the acre. It's kind of a confusing concept sometimes. In single family zones, we don't talk about units per acre. It's lot size. You have 6,000 square foot lots in R16, 8,000 square foot lots in R18. So the density is determined by how many lots you can get based on the size that's required and the width of the lot that's required, et cetera, how many buildable lots. In multifamily zoning, like the RM15 or the RM10, we talk about density per acre, units per acre, because you don't have detached, you're not building lots that have a certain size required. So you can actually break it down and say there's going to be 3,686 square feet or something in per unit, but that's not as meaningful as saying how many units per acre to people when they kind of picture it. So does that help kind of what you're thinking? So 6,000 square foot, 8,000 square feet, that kind of thing corresponds to those zones. We did talk about I'm missing my note there, but
you were going to wildlife.
Wildlife, sorry. So that's often disrupted with development. If there were single-family development, if it stays in the designation of low-density residential, and they were to use the zone that's there and create a few lots, there would likely be removal of trees and impact to wildlife. We do try to We do try to preserve trees in whatever kind of development, multifamily or single family. We try to preserve trees that don't need to be removed, but it depends on the plan and how that comes out. I did want to say to Commissioner Milkevich's point and some of the rest of you during the conversation as well, we do have areas of the city that are zoned for multifamily, for high density and medium density. Murray is not a town that does not have apartments or high density housing, and I've facilitated a lot of that as a planner. We have, in the core of the city, we have done projects that are, I mentioned 12 units to the acre in the RM15. We have done projects and approved projects that go up to 85 units per acre. But those projects are near transit stations. Those projects are near public transit so that you don't have the impacts from cars, extra traffic in the neighborhood. You have to design those areas very specifically to accommodate high density housing. And we're not talking about that kind of density in this case. But we are talking about an area that has long been, I would argue that the area is predominantly single family. There are some multifamily projects right around there, but even those multifamily projects that look like multifamily on the screen are single family detached in PUDs and their condominiums, et cetera. There are areas of the city that need to be preserved for low density housing, and I'm the first person to advocate high density housing. You all know that. And if you don't believe that, just call Trey down at the city sometime and ask him how evil I am about high density housing. I advocate for it a lot. This is not one of the areas where I would advocate for more need for medium density housing. We have the right kind of housing occurring. If more housing occurs on this property, it ought to be single family and low density. So that's just staff's take on it.
So
any other questions?
just to clarify my own understanding, if it stays the same, low density residential,
Yeah.
they are within their rights to go in and subdivide this property and build multiple houses on it because of the size of it, depending on what lot size they decide to do. So in the future, it might not be an apartment building, but they would be able to section off this property and build houses on it.
Absolutely. It's 1.5 acres. You could build several homes here.
And those houses would be the same height as any other house in any other single-family residential.
35 feet is the
Right.
height that we allow. I appreciate the height. I couldn't find that in my notes. There was a concern about what would I be looking up at, et cetera. You don't have a lot of additional height in the RM15 zone. At 12 units the acre, you wouldn't see huge tall projects, but probably not more tall than you would see in the R18 with homes, because 35 feet is what we allow to the top of a pitch currently. So, thank you. Any other questions?
All right. Any more discussion by commissioners?
I would just like to mention one of my concerns with this application. In my mind, low density for just this, or medium density for just this piece of property, it's not a stunning number, the number of units that could go in there. However, the concern is the adjoining piece that is owned by these individuals as well. If they were to be combined, then an overall project that could go into property that's that large would have a significant impact on a rather large area of this neighborhood.
We're closer to 4 acres, I would say.
Yeah, that's a major concern for me. So I don't look at this as a standalone piece entirely in my thinking. I also have to look at it as being joined with the existing.
And Commissioner Markham, that's a nice comment. I appreciate it. And I think when we say impact, we mean traffic, but also utilities.
Right.
Which I think our engineering department has stated they're concerned about high density utilities in that area, the water, electrical.
Sure. Yeah, it all goes together.
So I'm with Jared. I love high density housing. It kills me that we put height restrictions in MCCDD. The missing middle that's talked about in general plan, it's real. But this isn't the smartest location to intensify the use, in my opinion. It's not close to any major transit. It's more than a half-mile walk to the grocery store. It's not the smartest area to do it. Prior plans haven't felt like they needed to address this change. And Hillside Drive will not support the intensification. I agree with that statement completely because I cut that corner. I know how it is. So and my kids walk to McMillan all the time. So I mean, I
Where
see
your traffic is coming from.
Mhm.
Other comments from the commission? All right, I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we forward a recommendation of denial to the City Council for the requested amendment to the general plan future land use map, redesignating the property located at 344 East, 5600 South from low-density residential to medium-density residential.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Mr. Hall, you call for the vote, please.
Mr. Woodbury.
Yes.
Mr. Markle.
Yes.
Ms. Patterson.
Yes.
Ms. Wilson.
Yes.
Ms. Milkevich.
Yes.
Mr. Nay.
Yes.
Mr. Hacker.
Yes. So I would remind both the applicant and all of the neighbors that this is a recommendation to the city council. So please come and present your project, present your concerns to the city council when it comes to their agenda. It's important that you as residents come and present to the city council.
Yeah, you guys will get a notice.
All right, thank you very much. So our last agenda item, number 8, Land Use Ordinance, Section 1748, Sign Code.
I'm so excited.
This is, you all, the audience definitely needs to stay and listen to
We
the
need a
Sign
drum
Code
roll.
ordinance. Or you could leave. Thank you for
Can
participating
I
this
leave,
evening.
Mr. Commissioner?
No, you can't.
I know, it's Jim's
like
baby,
to.
so it's fine.
Thank you, Chairman Ned Hacker. Thank you, Chair. So, I just wanted to have an open dialogue discussion with the Planning Commission tonight on kind of your thoughts, ideas, your impressions of the draft sign code. We've been working on this for a number of months. It was, we were directed to put this on the back burner for a while because of some other things going on, but we've really been tasked and directed to move forward with this now. We'd like to do so. I'm just here to answer questions you may have. You can go by section, or you can go by questions that you may have in the draft ordinance itself. Just would like to have a discussion. Thank you.
Jim, one thing that I would like to say is items like this, I am so happy that we have 2 planners on the board, because I rely immensely on their knowledge and their opinion with this, because it's so technical, and I always feel good about when we deal with items of this scope,
Right.
that they do get a real thorough review, and they help to educate me along with everyone else.
Yeah. I agree. I have nothing to add because I'm not that
No.
smart.
I'm
And it
I'm
looks
waiting
great.
for some
let's move it
astute
forward.
comments.
Yeah, I mean, really, I think we've talked about it for a long time.
Yeah.
We've talked about different use cases. We've seen sign issues in other applications, obviously, and so the ordinance, just like the ADU, will allow us to give some guidance and provide good defensible, code that will allow us to establish kind of the feeling that we want for signs in the city. So I think it's wonderful. I think it's done a great job. It's very detailed. It outlines what we need and we don't need, and so I'll defer to the smart people if they think it needs to be better than what it is.
Thanks, Scott. I just
So-
wanted to say quickly, and I forgot, it is a rewrite. Okay, it is a rewrite of Section 1748, which is our existing sign code. It's really been modernized. If you go into the sign code currently, I give credit for the hand-drawn graphics that were done in the 70s and early 80s, but we're past that. We have some nice figures, some nice graphics. The intent of those graphics is to help the community, whether you're an owner or a builder or a property owner or a sign contractor, help you through the regulations so you understand what's allowed and what's not allowed. And that's what we're trying to do with those figures, which are very helpful, right? A picture's worth 1,000 words, right? It's
Absolutely.
there.
Or
It gives them a
1,016,
thought.
depending on how we're
Yeah, it gives them ideas, but some of the highlights and some of the exciting things are the pedestal signs that we're proposing that will help out large shopping centers or, centers such as Fashion Place Mall. I can tell you that they call me monthly to get an update on the sign code because they're very excited for the opportunity to perhaps do 2 pedestal signs for the mall, which would include electronic message centers or boards, which would allow them to advertise all the tenants and all the uses in there, especially during the holidays. it would help them. Now, it's not like they're hurting for business around the holidays. We all know that. If you go over there a few weeks before Christmas, it's very difficult to find a parking space.
But they could advertise overflow parking on their sign.
Correct. And where it's located.
Exactly.
Correct. And
See?
so that would be a good
This
thing.
ain't just a hat rack commissioner now.
That would be a good thing. The other thing that we're encouraging are monument-based signs in the ordinance. You know, we have pole signs right now. We're going to try to discourage those, but along the freeway, like in the CD zone or the MG zone, that's going to be hard. But we're trying to push people towards pedestal signs and other type of signs, monument-based or ground signs, building signs. We all know that along State Street or other areas in the city, every site's not perfectly flat. So we give examples of a monument sign if you're on a slope or on a berm versus a flat scenario. We've made changes to, signs on buildings, awnings, things of that nature. One of the exciting things too that we're addressing here is for our future city center in the MCCD zone, the banners. We do have some banners that have been done in the past. I don't know how successful it's been, but we really want to have some banners in our future downtown area where our city hall, library, new fire station, advertising events, advertising some of the summer events, winter events, maybe a play, things of that nature where we can get the public out. The other thing that we're trying to address that we currently have for the IMC campus, but nowhere is it identified in our current sign code, are pylon signs. So IMC has pylon signs. This is the size and height of those pylon signs, so we want to make them legal, so to speak, because they're already in place. And then banner signs, we're looking at banner signs and putting requirements in place, because right now our current sign code does a poor job of regulating temporary signage. There just isn't much in there. And we want to initiate a sticker program where people will come in and apply for a permit. And a lot of those permits are free. There isn't a cost, but there's time limits. And then we have a sticker that we can put in the corner of that banner. And any one of us, Zach, Jared, myself, Susan, when we drive by and see these, because, I drive around and look at things every day. Got to get out of the office once in a while. Can't just sit there all day long. But we can look and see that tag and say, no, I issued that in December and it's January 15th. We've got to remove that now. Their 30 days is expired. And then, some provisions for the style of banners that we see being employed at the car dealerships. Right now, the code doesn't address that. And then also temporary signage of a character allowed around holidays, saying, hey, we understand that you're a business here in Murray. We want to help out. We want to allow you to have some signage around the holidays. Between December and the first of the year, there's a 30-day period where they can have signage, extra signage up. Certain events like President's Day, Memorial Day, Labor Day, it gives them an extra 10 days or 14 days to have some additional signage as well. Now, it's not going to be easy when we first start doing this, but we're up to the task and we're excited about having a new sign ordinance and helping people and getting some good signage. I'd like to see us pull completely away from pole signs in the next 10 or 20 years. It would be nice to have a program, and we're working with the attorney's office on sign amortization. If there's a way we can do that at some point, to once these signs have lived their life, we come up with a calculation or formula that allows the owner to be compensated, perhaps. A lot of times that's not the case. We figure the life is 20 years and maybe they removed it at 18 and there might be a small amount there. But most of the time we know with signs they're not going to pull them out until they have to.
No, you would
But
be
at some
taking
point-
on a huge political
We would.
lobby. A huge, very powerful political lobby. It's a wonderful goal. I would support it completely.
It's
but
a goal.
boy,
I had a chance to, and I know I say this a lot. I worked for Sandy for approximately 11 years, and they started in the 80s, pulling away from the pole signs. And when you drive around now, you're hard pressed to find them. They're mostly monument based or pedestal or pylon. Still have them by the freeways, and there are still billboards, which we'll always have. But if we could, in the next
nice.
10, 20 years, make it hard to find those, that would be nice. We have a lot on State Street, which we realize those are areas we could potentially clean up. The areas along I-15 will be tough. We have a huge I-15, you know, length of I-15, the corridor, and billboards are here to stay. You know, we're not changing anything for that type of signage. So I'll be quiet now and listen. Thank you.
No, another thing that Ned actually mentioned to me about the A-frame signs, and it falls in line with the temporary signage. I think it's nice that you're trying to legitimize things that are out there that aren't going to go away,
Right.
that really don't hurt anything as long as people understand there are parameters that they need to stay in order to use these.
Right.
You know, A-frames don't bother me if they're done correctly, like you say.
And we'd like to give those business owners an opportunity to advertise something,
And you
like
know-
a special or something going on in the store.
If you allow something within certain constraints, if they go outside of it, it gives you a lot more authority to say, get it out of here.
Yep.
You either comply or remove it, and they can't really argue.
Correct.
So I have a question, Jim. So these pedestal signs with electronic
Yes.
changing message boards, so they can make revenue for the owners. Are there any signs like that Murray City would get revenue from?
That's a good question. I don't think so at this point. I mean, basically, they're intended for shopping centers or malls. Another place that, you know, we have that size parameter. So Jared and Zach and Susan and I, you know, kind of did an inventory of all the shopping centers in Murray City. And we were comfortable with that 7 acres in size for one of these. And then the only site that really exceeds the 20 acres is the Fashion Place Mall. We think they're the only good candidate. I don't think we could get revenue from these unless we did our own. If we put a sign in that said "Welcome to Murray City," and we did something of that nature, and then charged for advertisement, but I don't know that we would do that. I don't know that we would. I have seen some other cities that have their own sign, but I don't know. They generally advertise parks and rec programs, swimming lessons, you know, public meetings. They advertise what they're doing. I don't see public advertisement on those signs.
Right.
So,
Okay, thank you.
yep.
Can I go? I guess. So I just a couple things. Some of them are silly. There's a typo.
I'm sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
In the definitions of area of a sign, you only talk about rectangles and squares. Is that saying that I can't build a circular sign because it's not explicitly called out?
What about a rhombus?
I know it's silly.
No
but-
rhombi.
No, I understand.
What page
I'll
is
write
that on?
that.
That's
down.
on section 17.48.40 definitions, area of a sign.
Okay.
And then who?
What don't we talk about? I'm
You don't
sorry,
talk about
Commissioner Ned.
circular signs. You only
Okay.
talk about squares and rectangles.
Okay. Good question.
I think the intent was that we would, rather than trying to measure the area of the circle or an odd-shaped sign.
You would just
draw boxes
define
around
to
it
us,
measure that way.
and that-
It's just almost, it's just such a royal pain. Trying to measure the area of the cowboy-shaped sign.
Yes,
Yeah,
right.
and-
Of the
and-
Arby's hat.
And that's correct, and we show that in one of our figures.
Yeah, you do talk
right up
about like
front.
octagon shape or.
We do. Sorry I didn't have an answer for that right off the bat. What was your next?
Who wrote the definition for sign?
Who wrote the definition
Yeah.
for sign?
I'm just impressed. So that's just a general comment. You
Well,
guys.
then it was me.
Okay. On item, or so section 1748-100, prohibited signs. You specifically call out graffiti. So let's use Sandy City for an example, because you work there and you were familiar with it.
For 11 years.
On 900 East, there is a beautiful graffiti sign on a computer store that to this day, no one has touched. That's art. Is it graffiti in your mind, or is that art?
I think in that case, is it on a building?
It is.
That would be considered art. Maybe that's public art. Maybe that's what they're considering. But I can take a look. What's that address? on that
Oh, I
one?
don't know. It's just
Did you
before
say it's on-
9400. It's on 9th and just before 9400
Okay.
South. But what if I put, Joe's Crab Shack on it?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Then it's a sign. And if
That's
it's
a
not
mural
a
sign.
crab shack, it's off-premise and illegal, not.
Okay, but
I
so
agree.
at the end of the day, can I have someone come in, an artist come in and paint the side of my building as my sign, or are you opposed to that?
Yes, you can.
Like in the corner of 4800
Yes.
South and 300 West.
We like that.
Could be considered graffiti. So
Correct.
should we define it? Graffiti?
What I can do is that's something I can look at and make changes to and bring it back.
And then item number 10 in that same list is vehicle signs parked outside of designated parking stalls. So if I'm at Fashion Place Mall and I have my truck that's got my brand name on it and I park it on Winchester Street in the same spot every single day, is that a sign?
It is a sign, and that's an issue that cities are dealing with all up and down the Wasatch Front. That's a tough one because people will, they will move them around or they'll put them on sites. We just would like them to be in a parking space on an approved site or location. We run into them putting them on dirt fields or on corners or on places that cause a real problem.
Would the mall be considered a legitimate place for them to do that?
It would, but generally they should get the approval of the mall owners, of the property owner. We don't know that they always do. How we find out is then the property owner asks them to move, or one of the tenants asks them to move.
Can I ask a question along that? So on the corner of Vine and Atwood, there's a gentleman that parks his van every single night between the apartment complex and the daycare we have approved, and it's a window covering company. Is that considered a sign? He probably lives in the apartment, I'm assuming.
Does he live there and he's
I've never asked him, but I'm assuming he lives in the apartment.
Yeah.
It's, I don't know, it's street parking.
That's one that we could, I can tell you that this is something I've dealt with in 2 other cities, and it's a tough one, and especially for people that own a stick building, that have built a building and invested, and then so-and-so just pulls up and parks their car there because they, want advertisement down the street, or they want to do a temporary taco cart or something, whatever it is, it becomes an issue. So.
Do we have anything for the mobile signs? Have you seen those trucks that drive around?
To be honest, that's a tough one, and I don't think we do. I mean, people drive those around, and people have those wraps on their cars all the time.
Right.
And then the mobile, we really can't enforce that. Unless they decide to park in front of a building on a dirt field or park sideways
it's
across
the same
10
thing as what
parking
they brought up.
spaces.
It's just any vehicle that has signs, any trailer,
correct,
anything.
Self-driving cars are a thing.
Yep, UTA buses.
Yeah, actually,
trains.
that's legitimate. If you own a taxi company and you just drive it around the city.
So what I've seen before is you have a building that's built like an office building, and there's a construction project next door, and a guy decides, I'm going to park at the State Farm office building because I was there before the employees got there. I'm going to park my truck and my trailer. That all says Jones and Sons Construction. And so it kind of is a form of advertisement, or a home builder like Ivory Homes or somebody. They're just parking
Let's not
there
attack
across it.
contractors.
Just an example, Sue. But those become a problem, and then a lot of times they're active. They'll call the city and ask the city to have that vehicle or that trailer or whatever removed because it's illegally parked on property that's not theirs. That's what we're trying to enforce. I've also seen a lot of home builders in communities that are building hundreds of homes each year park their vehicles all over the city, trying to get advertisement down to their development. So that was the reason behind that. So.
On 1748-130, signs or standards for signs not requiring a permit. Number 2 talks about building identification. So if I'm in, if I'm in the TOD zone and I've got a 6-story building I just built, can I have my numbers 6 stories tall on that because it's my address?
Mm-hmm. You could.
Okay.
You could.
Okay.
Yes.
And then in that same section, not requiring a permit, number 16, temporary seasonal decorations. So they're seasonally decorative in nature or permitted. Such signs, okay, so Dead City has a giant metal pumpkin sculpture out front.
Yep, Jared approved that one.
So
he loves it.
I mean, am I suddenly not? Am I excluded from? Am I excluded?
But see, I don't
Wasn't
know
that
that's a
sign-
sign.
Yeah.
There's no verbiage on it or anything. It's almost like it's artwork. I hate to say that because you know how I feel about that business in that location. But I don't see that.
I recall
as a
also
sign.
Commissioner Markham, wasn't that in their conditional use, that sculpture?
But does this usurp the conditional use though? Does this be, now we're saying that it's not permitted as a sign? Does it get them out of that?
Is it a sign?
I don't know.
So
see, the thing is we've kind of moved away from, this is the terminology and Bryant and I talked about this, temporary seasonal decorations are temporary. You know, we're not talking about certain holidays and certain names, and we've kind of moved away from that rather than saying this holiday and these type of decorations and signs. I think it's intended for those periods, for temporary in nature. So, yeah, I mean, to do that, if we were okay with it, they wouldn't need a sign permit. You know, they wouldn't have to pay for a sign permit. They could just be allowed to do it.
But they'd have to remove it. It'd only be seasonally.
Correct. It'd be temporary and it's seasonal. Yeah. So he opens for the month of October, right?
But it
If
may
they,
not be a
and then
sign.
other times in the summer and certain dates, they can have it.
And it'll probably
Correct.
correspond with the sign dates anyways, because he wants to be open on holiday weekends.
Correct.
So,
Correct. Correct. So it's a way to regulate those.
and then in section 1748-140, standards for marquee. So if I build a new theater in the MCCD zone, are you telling me I can't have a neon sign on my marquee? I can't have any neon whatsoever, even though that's very traditional for a marquee sign of a theater?
The MCCD, that was.
Correct.
Sorry, I just.
Go ahead, Jared.
I just did that because I
Jared knows that
on
one.
your side. I can find the neon.
We had this recently. We had this discussion. Go
In the
ahead.
MCCD zone, the commission decided when we wrote those regs, and we wrote specific sign regs for the MCCD a while ago, and the decision was we're not gonna have exposed neon, backlit signs, everything was gonna be external, so that's why the no neon. The marquee came up and we said, don't we wanna let them do that kind of thing, and the thinking is, we very explicitly, as a commission, said, none of that in the MCCD zone.
With the exception of the Murray Theater, which already exists. And so,
Which is grandfathered.
Yeah.
But the one thing is, we did with the marquee, we went out and took a look in the case of Desert Star and the Murray Theater, that, you know, that's how far it goes out, 8 feet. We didn't want to
Okay.
make them non-conforming, and if they need to make repairs or change, you know, clean it up, they can.
Okay.
So,
do we have any examples of illegal signage where enforcement is going to proceed after we enact these new?
examples of illegal signage? You know, that's a great question. I mean, we probably have to go around the city and kind of do an inventory and see where we have things that are illegal. I mean, I know that Jared and Susan is kind of our institutional knowledge on signage. She knows where their illegals are at, and we could create a list.
Do we have a fair number? I mean,
I don't know. Do we, Jared? Do we have a large amount? It's something.
I don't want the number.
Here's the thing.
Know
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a tough one to answer. Right off the bat, right off the cuff, of course we do. And of course we're going to adopt a new sign code, and it's going to create some non-conforming signs. But those will be grandfathered and allowed to stay. But if they try to change them out or replace it and extend that use, they wouldn't be allowed to do so. You know, they'd be allowed to do typical repairs, but not to just replace it to another illegal sign type. That's a great question. That's one we'll have to look into. I can't answer it right now.
Then my last one has to do with temporary signs, specifically banners for sports team tryouts and things like that. Are you going to make them get the sticker for that? A lot of those organizations are not-for-profits. They have no money whatsoever. Murray Girls Softball is the one I
Correct.
always refer to because I know it
In
intimately.
that case, no. I mean, because really, the civic signs and signs of a nature like that, we want to work with those groups and allow them to put those in place. I mean, we have the farmers market all summer long over at the park.
Yeah.
You know, we're going to tell them, come in and talk to us and put your sign there for the next 120 days. That's fine.
I know that nobody
You know.
nobody asks the Murray School District when they hang across State Street
They
over
do
on the
not.
Sky
They
Bridge
do not.
because I know we never
Ones
did.
like that, we're not concerned about. One of the things I'm concerned about, though, is sight triangles. And so if they put it on a corner, that creates a sight distance or sight triangle problem. That is a problem where we'd ask them to push it back further. But I want that signage. That signage is needed in our community so people know about these events or things to sign up for.
Perfect. That's all I had. Thanks.
Thank you. Great questions.
You never fail to disappoint me. Thank you.
I spent hours I was getting more and more excited as we came.
He brought up a couple that I'm gonna have to spend some time tomorrow on.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Good questions. Sign codes are tough.
Oh.
This is real tough. Cities struggle.
You've done
with
a very
sign
good job.
ordinances. Thank you,
Yeah,
Travis.
everyone that's worked on this, it
Thank you.
looks nice.
Minutia of
Team's
any
done a good
kind
job.
is tough.
It is.
The minutia of the marquee.
And reread the definition of sign if you didn't, because it really is.
Okay.
It made me weep when I read it.
A little teary-eyed myself. So earlier,
Were you
Jim,
in bed? You ready for sleep?
Yeah, pretty much.
earlier at our pre-meeting, you made the comment about other cities really making progress, and some legal people have said you can find a loophole in the sign ordinance anytime, anywhere, any city.
Yes.
So have you looked at some of those and to really find out what they might have done that that we could do?
We have. I mean, we've looked at some
Yeah.
of the better ones across the state, and I'm going to say Sandy has a really good code. I mean, we've looked at theirs. We've looked at Layton's. We've looked at West Valley cities. We've looked at Orem. I mean, there's a number of them, especially ones that have regional malls, you know, like we do, to make sure that we're hitting that. But we did, and I can't reel off all the cities, but we did benchmarking with about 10 or 12 other cities and their sign codes. But the thing that's been very helpful is Bryant's help and experience, the court case that we've talked about, Reed versus the town of Gilbert, correct? Gilbert Reed, whatever we want to call it. But that has been the case study that everybody is working to prevent with their new sign codes. And we have that legal background with Bryant and GL, and they have helped me craft this and address this. So when you get in the beginning of this ordinance and you see things, you know, in the section of scope, interpretation, severability, illustrations, not the illustrations, but findings, purpose, and intent, and we talk about First Amendment rights and different things in there, we've hit that. We've hit that segment. If we do get potential litigation, they see that we're trying to avoid it, that we are specifically trying to avoid it, that we've addressed it. We feel like we've done our best. There could be a few changes, but if we hit 9 out of 10, you know, if we had 10 conditions and we got 9 out of 10, I think we've done about our best with a sign ordinance. There's just people that specialize in finding holes in things, and you know, we're not, you know, we're going to do our best to be fair and neutral and give people their First Amendment right. There's a lot of things that personal preference we probably won't like, but there's nothing we can do about it. You know, we have to allow them to have their free speech. So.
Okay. So what are our next steps?
Well, the next steps would be, and that's a great question, if the Planning Commission is comfortable, I can schedule this for a public hearing in 1 month on March 7th. I have to hit certain public hearing requirements, so it wouldn't be 2 weeks from now. It would be 30 days from now or 1 month from now. And then after that, if you forward a positive recommendation subject to any changes that come up that particular evening, it would then go to the City Council. Now, we have had a committee of the whole discussion with the City Council a few months ago back, showing them some of the graphics and some of, you know, the concepts and thoughts and ideas. They liked it. We'd probably have another committee of the whole in April and a public hearing with the council in late April or early May to get it adopted. So those would be the next steps.
Okay.
Trying to get adoption in the next 60 days.
I think that's awesome.
Do we need to take any action to give you guidance to do that?
Not tonight.
Okay.
Yeah, but if you guys feel comfortable with me scheduling it up and bringing it back and
Absolutely.
in
Yep.
I feel good about
30 days, let's do it. That's as quick as we can do it.
All right,
I'd like
I-
to bring it back in 2 weeks, but we've got to meet certain notice requirements.
Any
so.
We
anybody
need to
have
make a motion.
conflict with that? No, I don't
No.
think so.
Not in this case.
So
Now, we will have to notice some of the large sign companies, I believe, and Susan let me know, Bryant, just so you know, Reagan Outdoor Advertising, some of the others that we have.
Young Electric, yeah.
Yep, we're going to have to send them notice, some of the big sign companies.
Yeah.
I don't perceive any
Terry's
big
RV,
issues.
since they come in every other week.
They may have questions, and we'll make the notice such that we're free to talk to them way before a meeting. Come in and talk to us. Let's talk and go through it before we show up to a public hearing. We are not addressing or changing the outdoor advertising section whatsoever for the billboard companies. That is the
Oh,
same
that'll save
language
you
that was
some-
agreed to, and
some
they'll know
heartburn
that
right there.
off the bat.
Yeah.
Because that's going to be the big push. You know,
Yes.
it's billboards. What are you doing to us? Type of thing.
Right.
We're not changing that at all, so they should be good.
Just
So-
put that on the very front
Probably
of whatever
should.
notice
Probably
you
should.
provide those companies.
You know what?
and-
I am going to put my name
It'll
and,
save
and
you
phone
a
number
lot
and
of
say-
grief.
and basically say, feel free to call me. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't see why that's a problem. So have these people call me for the next
Otherwise, you get a cease and desist order.
3-4 weeks. Yeah. Well, and if they have questions, great. Come and say, discuss with staff. This is an issue, but the other 5 items we're good with. So that's the hope.
Nice.
So, thank you.
Can we put it at the very end of the agenda, whatever the agenda is?
I think so.
Just to make them
With
sick.
a little note that says other people can leave before this item comes up.
Well, it may be the biggie for that evening. I don't know what we have coming up, but, you know, a public hearing and this and sign companies, it might be, you know, a good idea to have it towards the end to get the easier stuff out of the way. That's the way I would kind of sculpt that agenda anyways, so,
All right.
or organize it. Thank you.
Anything else from staff?
Next meeting in 2 weeks.
Okay.
The central station area plan, you're going to get your presentation next week.
Oh, nice.
Okay.
Oh, I won't
Thank
be
you.
here next meeting.
Oh, you always say that, and then you show up.
Oh, no, I knew I was going to be here today. He
Well-
just didn't care.
Will the consultant be here then too?
I'll be in
Okay.
Huntsville next meeting,
So our
and then
lead
I'll be in Atlanta the
our lead
following.
consultant will be here to help present that as well.
Great, thank you. Any other business from commissioners, staff?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you.
Dad,
Adjourn.
well done.
Thank you for your assistance.